Meeting to order. We'll go ahead and do the pledge of allegiance and then we'll
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to start with public works first. Yeah.
Do you want the recorder?
Probably better.
Probably should have.
Yeah. Then go to the sheriff, the other big department.
Well, someone know we want a recorder, I said, well, yeah, I suppose
Oh,
it's a meeting.
recorder.
If I have any questions, I can go back and listen to it.
Been nice if they put this according to population.
That was one of the suggestions that was given, was to be able to search by population or be able to search by comparable mill levy. So I think they will work with the software as the program advances.
I'm gonna guess Scott.
Isn't Scott City quite a bit bigger than Cheyenne County per population? So their tax base should be more? A little bit?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Not dramatic.
Okay. All right.
Brett, my survey was from 06, they had 5,000 population.
260. What do we have right now?
What do we have?
Yeah.
32.
Barely.
Okay.
Well, if you take a look at these, you got these counties here that are fairly consistent. The low is 40,000. And for crying out loud, the high is 148,000.
Yeah, but, I mean, look at Coons, that's the same as us, they're locally.
So there's an average there.
And some of them are entered as monthly rates rather
Yeah,
than
I
an
noticed
annual
that.
rate.
Yeah.
And so we tried to, if the county entered a monthly salary, we tried to take that times 12 so you could compare it with the annual salaries. And we tried to write that figure out in the side.
And of course, I'm assuming that this isn't the top of the pay scale like we're going to compare this to, is that correct?
This is what you approved a year ago for the employees. This is their pay scale that you approved. So this is where the employees are at currently. This is the compensation survey. So, you know, you had approved a 3% cost of living increase. Are you going to do the 3% cost of living increase? Are you going to do the salary increase and or both? It's what I need to know.
I'm under the impression we're going to do a pay compatibility.
That's kind of what I was thinking too,
Okay.
but I don't.
Rather than the cost of living.
Well, there, for instance, this year there was no cost of living. The index was nil.
But we had a 1.7.
That was based on the prior year, yeah.
Yeah, but a year ago when I redid the 2015 pay
1.17,
scales
yeah.
was a 1.7.
Well, what we're looking at is an $8,852.11 difference between this and what your actual salary would be. So I guess what we need to decide is that would be $737.67 monthly pay increase. Where are we going to fall at in our budget?
On average.
I think Dave's budget can handle that.
What's that?
I think Dave's budget can handle it.
But what about departments that can't handle that?
Well, that, we're going to have to make a decision on where the funding is going to come from.
Okay.
It'll probably come out of courthouse general.
Maybe something we ought to stair step up too. I mean, that way we can budget accordingly. I mean,
Can
yes,
Comment?
Dolores.
I don't know what year it was or what commission we had, but we had a commission that had decided we were going to get our county back up to a level where we're comparable with other counties
Right.
of our size and evaluation. And what they had decided to do was they worked out a merit percentage, and they worked out a cost of living percentage, and then they were going to do it like in a, I can't remember, the 3 or 5 year span. They were going to get us increased. We got 1 year of that, I think, and then it got new commissioners, and it just went away.
Okay.
So merit was, we were supposed to interview each of our employees and evaluate them, and then they were given a merit raise for that evaluation.
I don't like that. I can work with it.
And then, of course, the cost of living came from I think it was a consistent 5% at that time, just to get us caught up, because we hadn't been getting the cost of living raise at the time.
I think
That's just his idea and suggestion.
for God's sake, will you turn this into a popularity contest? I don't
Right.
think we want to get into that.
Right.
I think that was back to Jane, Ronnie, and Tim Riley, is when they decided to do that. And it averaged out to about a 3% across the board. And I think they gave the 3% one year, and then the board changed, and the continuity of that fell through the cracks.
That's why I think we need to do a
So,
I
compatibility.
think if we started like a 4% and then moved it up next year, then we're gonna be, by the third year, we ought to be back to the average.
Okay, what's that gonna put it is, if we did that this year, what would that put him at? The employees have been underpaid for a long time, especially certain departments. But my concern is, where are we gonna fall if we go through this in our budget, where we already had to, we're almost at the max mill. I mean, we're at almost at 110 mills right now, and I'd like to see this cut that down by a lot next year.
For 2017,
Yeah, because I hear the general public and they're mad at us, but they don't also understand that we had a new auditor, and it's good for auditors to have us have a cushion. But when we've got a $5.2 million cushion, we need to no. I thought that was what was in the audit report.
no,
I think part of the cushion too was because of the cap that we're faced with, was to get it in the budget and get some money there to operate on. Because when that cap hits, we won't be able to increase our budget without an election.
without an election.
And so I think that's where part of that cushion came from. It might seem a little bit much this year, but as we go down the road and we're not able to increase our budget for operating, we're going to go back to that cap and be drawing on those funds.
Yes, Cody.
Just a reminder, that if you're doing the math and you're just going to take that 4% across the board on the budget line, I just want to remind you that we did do some salary adjustment on dispatch, so we need to not include
The adjustments for
dispatch because they've been adjusted up, and from my studies of comparable dispatch centers, we're now there. I haven't had a chance to look at the study on this one, but from my informal study of calling other dispatch centers and finding out where they start, what their top pay is, the communication officers are at a level where they don't need to be included in there, so you can subtract that number out, the dispatch personnel number out, before you do the across the board 4%, okay? If you're going to come up with an accurate number.
I did that.
Raise in the last year. It's gonna be less compared. I don't think we want to go any further than percentage raises.
Right.
I ran a report on what we paid out in personnel for the 2015 year. Of course, this doesn't have December in it yet, but I kind of averaged it out and added another month in there. And if we were to do a 3% raise, I came up with a $1,512,000 figure of what we paid in salary per year for the 2015. So a 3% raise is going to be $45,365. I figured at a 5% raise, which is what I asked for in my budget and was approved, it's $75,600. So you're looking at a difference of $30,000 between 3 and 5.
Like as far as going up,
Pardon?
that's what budget look like as far as going up. I mean, most of these departments gonna be able to cover that.
A lot of the departments will be able to cover it. And what departments can't cover, I sincerely believe we can take it out of the courthouse general and adjust from there. Keeping in mind that if that darn trial does not cost too much, we boosted the courthouse general because of the trial. So the money is sitting there.
Okay. Not much of a gambler.
Well, that's an unknown that you can't set a number on when it comes to court-appointed attorney fees. You just can't. And jail care costs, you can't set, you don't know, and that's the scary part when it comes to budgeting.
Do you have any thoughts, Lori?
As far as,
As far as what you think would be the right thing legally?
well, I think this is probably more of a policy decision rather than a legal decision. I mean, I do think reviewing, rather than just looking at it as an overall percentage increase and looking more as a pay compatibility, probably has some benefit for you guys, especially if you have some maybe long-term goals on, and I know this is something that's been discussed and we're not discussing today, but I think it's an important consideration, and actually having clearer employee policies and descriptions, job descriptions. So I think if you go through and you actually do a pay compatibility study with the idea that hopefully within the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to go back through and really work on our job descriptions, it puts you guys in a good place from a liability perspective. Rather than, because that way it's not just an arbitrary percentage across the board, it's really looking at what the positions are doing, comparing them to other counties.
That is the other thing that I'd like to see go along with this is to revise and update the job descriptions, because I feel that those are directly tied to our salaries.
They should be.
And
Well, and from I do have a legal perspective on the job descriptions. 2 things. One, in looking at them, I think there's been a preference to have employees draft those job descriptions. I think legally that's a bad idea. I think it puts the county in a bad position to have the employee be setting those expectations. It creates confusion. The wording in the job descriptions are kind of inconsistent with one another sometimes. So I think if we're going to do a pay compatibility study, looking at the job descriptions would be great. The second kind of legal liability issue we might be wanting to think about on job descriptions is with the PCPs that we do right now. I kind of touched base with the medical center that does those, and they actually have a number system that I think we should include in our job descriptions to identify what level of physical ability they have to qualify for in the PCP that's currently not in the job description. I think that would save dev time, but also protect us from more of a workers' comp sort of issue to be able to clearly identify what number is attached to that job.
this board just approved that PCP testing as of 2015, and it currently is not in our policy handbook. That is something, the policy handbook is something also that needs to be revised, and that is definitely something that needs to be included in that as well. Yeah.
We have a lot of these to go through.
Okay.
I have each department here. They're sorted by department. The department head is on the top, and then the ranking employees underneath how it's set up. So, this was just a starting place.
Can I have a copy?
You want?
I just have what I took home from last week.
This one is for the county attorney, and they're in random order. There is no order to.
So I know we were looking at the public works. Are you guys wanting to look at everything and then go back on each
I
department?
think we ought to go through it and then come to agreement on each one, and then we make a single motion to.
This is dispatch. Sheriff. department is highlighted at the top to kind of draw your eye. Some of them we found we are just about right.
Yeah,
What do you guys think on the road and bridge?
On the director. Satisfied with that average on there?
And
59?
I don't know,
but I think it's still go over 2 or 3 years, but if we can't change the budget, I guess it doesn't make any difference.
and on, when it comes to grants, how does that affect? If a grant is written, we have one employee that is employed with a grant. So when you do a salary increase, how does that affect that employee?
Well, I think you have to make a salary decision independent of the grant, and then, because it makes
Address
two problems
that.
with grant. One, it's not guaranteed it's gonna be there all the time, and then it's not coming out of your guys' pocket.
Right.
And two, with the grant, I mean, there's obviously going to be additional work and
This is a
administration
3-year
involved.
grant, so that's something we don't have to worry about. There's a cost share applied to it by the county, but it's a fixed cost.
And we can get our budget next year where
We won't do any, to me, we won't do any salary adjustments on that.
Well, I mean, ultimately, that's a policy decision. I do think it's something to consider that ultimately you can't count on that grant being there as a guaranteed salary. But
Who knows after 3 years whether we want to continue?
yeah.
What you think about that?
I just did a little bit.
There's a tree. Okay.
I cut more than one tree.
Yeah. Which would break down to how much money?
Yeah.
Right, there's a decimal there, yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
What's that?
Per month.
All the way 430, 75.
Which that ain't bad.
I think if we do that way, we're safe with the budget.
Yeah.
So what he's saying is do a 4% increase, and then we want to get to where everybody else is. Because
Then the budget, time budget, so we can cover the other half to get them back to regular by the third year.
Okay.
but
And we can make a motion.
not do it across the board like you were saying. Just
I mean, that's a policy decision, but I think in
I
light of some of
agree.
the other legal considerations, it might be helpful.
okay, I'm in agreement with that, which would. Get that to- sorry. That's at 52. We do 4%. It'd be 52,650. 52,650. Is that okay?
And this is
I
for,
think still need to do a salary comparison, make sure we're on scale with the law. You need to take a little time to research this.
Yeah, but we gotta get it comparable with other counties that have about the same population.
I agree with you.
And that's what this is.
Now, did we do, Dolores, we did 5% for your,
Well, that's what I had put into my budget, but
so far we've approved this, right?
Right, I just wrote it on the other one, the page.
And, road
Okay.
foreman or road and bridge?
So, can I, for my record, so I know what you did, so I know how to adjust these?
Do you agree on that?
That ain't what we had, Rodney.
we had 52,650 on stair step.
Yeah, next year it'll be that,
And is that
Yeah.
4%?
right. No,
That's what we're here for,
Five-
is figuring next year, not
52,650.
this month.
well, I meant
Oh,
in 2017.
And that's 4% of
In half this year, I
Yes.
okay.
in 2016. However, we got time to adjust the budget for 2017. See what I'm getting at?
I see where you're getting at.
So you guys are talking about a 2-year plan to get to pay compatibility?
Yeah.
I'm thinking that way we're not,
We don't want a
Figure
bunch of
out.
taxpayers mad. They're gonna be anyway, but not quite as mad.
but do a comparative of
Each time to do that, not have it just automatic, but with the idea that the commissioner's goal within the next 2 years is to try to get paid
Right.
up to that. Okay.
Is that okay with you, Rodney?
Yeah. it's okay.
So I've got 4%.
So that will be how much again?
52,650 for next year. 650.
650.
And that'll go.
The road and bridge foreman. I think
His pay scale was
I
bumped
I
to
would say he's
classification
within
levels.
where he should be.
Right.
So we don't want to mess with that.
Leave it the same.
I agree, but I can't see what you guys are looking at, so.
Well, that's good, just keep agreeing.
Step up.
Uh,
This is what the average is.
Heavy equipment operator?
Above average. Yes. Okay.
Especially with these experiences.
Right.
Okay.
I agree.
Heavy equipment operator?
He also had a classification change this year. So I didn't know how you guys wanted to handle that. it should be right
Oh,
before
okay.
his, there's an equipment operator and then there's a mechanic.
If we just approve the classification 5, then the clerk can adjust all of the other tiers. I mean, we don't have to sit here and figure every one of them.
Right.
We'll never get out of here.
Right, we're right on, I mean, once he gets to a classification 5, he's gonna be $3,000 above the average, so I think we're okay there.
Yes.
Okay. So then,
So keep this the same also.
yeah. Then on the equipment operator,
Okay, the average is 39,288.20 for a salary.
Well, that most of them ain't making quite that, so we want to give them a pretty decent raise, but I gotta figure out
Where you
what's.
get
We're
the
talking
average?
about the top.
The top one, yeah.
Right, but we want these guys to get someplace comparable to the back.
Yes, absolutely.
That's what I'm working on, percentage to get us
And you're basing this over 2 years?
a right. Oh, your average.
39,288.
Still ain't gonna get there. Working on
And the other counties that you're comparing these to are paying insurance, health insurance as well, correct?
Well, that's part of the data that was put in there, and it should tell you the benefits on there, the percentage of benefits.
Well, I just want to make sure because before we,
That's in
because
this
we do have
column,
pretty good healthcare plan.
the benefit dollars and the benefit percentage on this comparison survey over here at the end of the column. Some of them have zeros in there, some of them have numbers in there. Over here
Okay.
is the benefits.
Some of them have zeros, you're
Mhm.
right.
You're right.
So
So,
I don't,
and that's something else I think you need to be aware of, is you are paying 100% of the health insurance. And so, an employee, spouse, and dependents, that's about $1,500 a month, maybe a little less than that, but roughly $1,500 a month.
Average of all the operators are getting 6%. That's gonna get us close to the average. They agree.
33,155. Do you want to round it off to 56?
Yeah.
33 what? 1.
5574.
Okay.
I don't know how we can get a comparable average when some of them have zero benefits, so.
Well,
I
but
mean-
you're just talking about the salary.
I know, but
Yeah.
if you told me, hey, you can have a job where you have complete, all your health care taken care of for 40,000, but here I'll give you a job for 45,000, but you have your health care.
Right.
I'm gonna go with the 40,000. So it's not I mean, we're not comparing apples to apples, oranges to oranges. So, I mean, we want to take care of all of our employees, but we also have to take that into consideration.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I don't
Absolutely.
have a problem with that number for the heavy equipment operators, 33,155.74, but that would be a classification 5, is that right?
Yeah.
Do we want to bump up the whole tier coming up?
Well, she can backtrack from that figure and figure the other tiers.
So you're gonna give her a percentage amount to
Yeah,
increase all
yeah,
tiers?
yeah.
Okay.
That way,
Because I just took a guy.
if somebody's at classification 2, they'll get a pay raise.
I just
but-
wanted to make sure Deb was clear on what her guidance was. So-
Right.
I mean,
Right, I'm kind of,
No, I want to treat it.
they're gonna notice that.
Yeah. I agree, I think we do need, I think it's long past time. So I'm okay with that. And you did it on.
That was 6%.
So was that far out of whack?
It was
Yeah,
quite
I
a
think
bit.
it's way low.
Yeah.
So
And that's-
just to be clear here, is Deb supposed to increase each classification by 6%?
That would be my guess to make
for
it.
all equipment operators.
Right.
Yes,
That
for
was
all
my plan, that way we're gonna.
And we just don't have to. I mean, okay.
A heavy equipment mechanic.
Well, he went,
I think-
we are just like.
I think we're right on,
The mechanic you left the same.
Oh,
because the average is,
That's,
once he's a classification 5, he's going to be getting $3,000 more than the average.
So,
You agree with that, Dave?
Yeah, and I was gonna put above the bump scale.
Okay. Okay.
are you happy with that?
I think that's good, yeah.
Okay. No. What's the difference between his? What's the difference between Kelly's and the other? He's just on pay scale 5 then?
Kelly
Hilton.
Hiltz,
So yeah, his would go up as well. What we
6%. I would adjust each one of those classifications 6%, and he would be a class 5.
basically all these other equipment operators, Gator, Okay, we can do that.
There was not a secretarial, the secretarial information that was in the compensation survey was for like administrative, like administration to the board and that kind of thing. There wasn't anything for an office secretary. So
what about office clerk or clerical?
there wasn't. Either you're a deputy clerk or there wasn't just clerical.
Dave, what were you thinking on her?
Well, I did have a different scale, but
Well, this is what she signed in 2015. So that's what they were going off of.
this is an office manager.
I'd say that's a little more closer in line unless you're getting, so you want a bigger percentage on that to get her to.
Yeah. How long has she been a classification 3, Dave?
Well, see, I was gonna move that to a 5-step classification.
Okay. Well, if we need to bump up, you're not going to need to bump up the classification, are you?
Possibly not.
Okay.
But she was at a 3-step, and I was gonna move it to a 5-step, the rest of it, like the rest of the employees.
Okay, so,
Now, but the rest of the clerical employees or administrative employees are all 3-step.
Yeah, is there a 5-step on?
On all the road
On
bridges,
engineering.
this
Right,
this
but
is what I proposed earlier.
I'd go with that.
basically, he's going to change her, where's she going to have 5 classifications? And what would
Okay,
the classification
I see.
5 letter look like? But I'm fine with that.
I don't know.
So are you going to put the rest of your employees on a 5-step rather than a 3-step?
If we do it there, we're going to have to do it across the board.
To keep equal?
You mean the whole county?
Yes, all the other departments that are on currently the 3-step. Because a 3-step is what has been used. This is a new proposal by one of the departments. So what is your wishes to how you want to do that?
I make a motion for that. Go with a 5-step.
Classification.
I'll make a motion, we go to a 5-step program.
I would like to come before you make a decision. I gave you the last time I was in here a scale that is used by a lot of counties. It's used by the ASCS office, the Conservation Office, and it gives so much more options as to, it's not really a stair step, but yet it is. This would classify you as along the top, the A through L, as your level of education coming into the job. So you would pick, let's say somebody had a degree in something, so that would automatically put them like in C or D. And then for their first year, and then second year, third year, it would just, as they educate or how long they get here, then you just, that would tell you how much they would be paid.
You know, education is a good thing, but I don't see Doug working for the road department with a PhD making any more than a guy that learned how to drive that machine while the other guy was
Right.
getting his PhD.
But it would be, there would be a write-up
I
for
mean,
each
for some
different
departments, that's
department.
great.
There would be write-ups for each different department.
If we do that, we're gonna have 3 types of scales. You know, either we stay with the 3 and the 5, or we go to 5. That's,
I'd say split them, we'll go with 5 straight across.
And to be clear, now the 5 classification has mostly been for technical jobs, and the 3 has been more for
the
office.
5 classification has been engineering service.
But like
And
in our
that just
office,
happened in
it's-
April. The 5-step was just presented in April of this year.
You can
Okay,
have all
so
that
it's
experience
not
and be
been
a hard
done
worker, though.
prior to
So
that.
it's relatively new as well.
Yes.
You know,
Okay,
you
yes.
come out of college with a PhD and a doctorate in something, and, you know, you get behind a desk and play on your phone all day. So sometimes, I don't know. I'm fine with the 5 classification. We're gonna have to make some changes, but
I will second your motion in the 5.
All right.
all those in favor of changing it to a 5 classification scale, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay.
For clarification, could you restate your motion?
The motion is that we go to a 5 classification system for all positions in the county.
However, it's instead a little more leeway in.
And do you want me to figure the percentage of difference between them and just graduate it up accordingly?
Right, because we're gonna prove the classification 5 or the highest classification.
The
She can
number
figure
of-
back on the percentage to get it.
Class 5. You, okay, sorry.
Rick, see, also on my descriptions, you know, I had a years of service or something like that that was incorporated to it. You know, we're not really looking into any longevity pay program.
Well, with your classification, maybe some of that classification ought to be longevity.
And that's what I incorporated too.
And of course, that's why I figured you go to a 5-step program, that could be implemented in the 5-step program.
I think that'd be fine.
In the policy handbook, there isn't anything for longevity pay. When an employee gets to 10 years of service, they get 6 additional vacation days, but that's the only thing as far as longevity. So there is no pay increase according to the handbook.
Any questions? Pretty much through that then.
I think we got to prove it.
Okay.
What about the part-time employees? They also were included in that.
Did we
What?
have an average on what their hourly pay was? I didn't see one,
No, no.
so I,
They weren't in the compensation survey, so I just printed out,
how do you feel, Dave, on the hourly wages of our part-time employees? Are you happy with that?
No, I think it's on the right track. We need to be bumping them up because we're not paying them benefits.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
I'd say give them 6% then.
Okay.
That's what you said, you're on good.
Yeah, I forgot they didn't have benefits, so yeah.
What did we finally decide on this? Just for my information.
What is,
Nobody killed me, I guess.
oh, we moved her up to
Classification
the 5-step program, so she's back in.
With the amounts that he had proposed, there was a.
Dave has that figure if you want.
$27,390. was the level 5 on this.
And one thing I think I wanted to make clear on the classifications, I want to make sure we're clear on this, since this is going to actually define employee relations. You're saying 1 year for each classification. That's what was on the sheet, or because you adopted a 5-step classification
Right.
without identifying what those classifications were.
A lot of times, the director of that department will come and say that they want to raise up. I don't know, that's something we can address in the handbook,
Okay.
because
So you're going to leave it at the discretion of the director of that
Yeah.
division to define the classifications? I
Because-
just wanted to make sure that was
that's
clear.
that's good to clear that clarification, but, yes, Ryan?
But then what do you do with the department heads? Will the county commission decide to step them up a tier? I mean, the department head would do the people underneath them, but who's going to step up a tier for the department head?
It'll have to be a commission decision, I
I
believe.
don't think so.
And those that are at 3 now, will remain at 3 and work up to a 5, or do they become a 5?
I think we're gonna change the classification scale across the board to up to a 5-tier classification scale.
And then each department will define
Right.
the classifications within that department to determine.
And it sounds like we're gonna have to redo our handbook here very soon to be. Okay, we ready for the landfill director? Okay.
So what did you decide on the part-time people?
Part-time people,
And
I've got 6% due to no benefits. We'll do a 50%
okay.
Well, I'd say we're
He's above average leaving.
Yeah. So the average is 675. Currently, we're at 3159.01. So I'd say that's good.
No, he's not that high.
That's what our page is showing. You want to see it?
What do you have, Dave?
I don't have that sheet. Sorry about that.
So for this department, I would need to go back and readjust that to a 5-level scale.
Yeah.
And when we say a 5 scale, if we're happy with that top figure, the others are just adjusted in between. It doesn't mean we're increasing from that top scale 2 more times.
Right.
Is that,
But I need to know how,
they need to decide the top classification,
They
the top pay.
so that I know how to adjust the numbers to get into a
So we're above the
5
average.
pay scale.
And then if we have him be the classification 5.
So he'd already be at 5.
Right. And then he would be subject to the cost of living increases that we do pretty much yearly.
But if someone new started, this way they can move themselves up.
Right,
Right.
and they have reason to do a good job because they can be bumped up 5 times.
I agree.
Okay? So I'm okay with that. You guys are okay with that, Rodney?
Yeah, to keep it where it's at, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and I want to make sure that Deb has the proper authority here. What you're asking her to do is to add 4 and 5, have 5 be the current 3 number,
Right.
and have her average out the numbers. Correct? I just want to make sure she is proper.
And you want Byron left at a level 3,
No, 5.
moved to 5.
Because he's already above average, so.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure.
This is kind of a chaotic type of deal. Anyway, on the, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the part-time pay scale.
Keith.
Like Danny, or I guess it's Keith. Does Danny do that help still?
This one.
Danny still do part-time on this as well? Secret.
Oh, yeah.
He was in the road and bridge, with the road and bridge part-time people. This is just landfill, and that's how I split him out, was by department.
That's a 6% number, he's kind of underpaid to work with.
Rodney, what do you think on that? Do
Keep it where
6%?
it's at. Yeah.
6% increase with all your part-timers across the board.
Part-timers under the road and bridge, under the public works.
Either that or bump him up a classification.
So we got your 6.
I think maybe just bump him up 1 for clarity. Or 6%. Well, 6%.
Well, let me see.
Well, that's not gonna count. If you 6% of $12 and you move them up to a class 3.
If the supervisor wants to bump him
I say we reload the classification.
Okay.
And no 6% increase?
to 1203,
Right.
Yeah, it's,
That's a good point.
we take him up a classification, that's going, I mean, are you in agreement with that?
I think the question is, because to me, kicking him up a classification is a different question than doing a compatibility
Right,
comparison
right.
to set what you want the classifications to be. To me, those are two separate questions.
It's essentially giving them a raise without kicking up the whole system.
Okay.
And I guess when somebody's in classification 5 at a part-time, then we'll have to address it then. But I would just,
But at this point, you're wanting to remain, you're not wanting to change the hourly on this part-time position for the landfill position.
I say go up 6% if they're already at the top of their game. If they're not, just move up the position.
If,
I'm okay with that.
to keep up with the cost of living, you know, for the part-time road and bridge people, you adjusted all of those 6%. So do you not want to do that for the landfill as well?
Well, I
For
guess-
any part-time?
Let's just do the whole.
Well, it depends on everybody else is at their top of the classification, right? I mean, some of these guys working at the landfill are not, you know.
Right.
So if they're at the top, increase them 6. If they're not at the top.
Well, that's not what, I want to make sure you guys did what you wanted to do then, because what you did before was increase 6% across.
We're gonna have to leave them at the same and increase 6%, otherwise we're gonna get into a legal.
Right, yeah, just bring them up to 6.
Yeah, we'll just bump up the pay scale 6% throughout the 5 classifications, if you guys are okay with that. I think that's more legally. Thank you, Nicole.
Yep. And then leave him in a class 2.
Yes.
George made an interesting comment. Obama law is going to force us to provide, offer health insurance
Even for a part-time.
for part-time if they are receiving 30 hours
30 hours.
or more weeks. So how does this average work out? I mean, how do they determine this?
And that's, you have an employee in your office that is consistently working 30 hours. We have to offer, as an employer, we have to offer him health insurance. We are in open enrollment. We have to offer that. Whether he takes it or not is his choice. But
And how that would work is at the end of the year, we would take an average for the hours worked, and if it's average of 30 or more, then we have to offer them health insurance.
That's what I'm getting at. You have to wait till 1 full year is completed before you decide that? It's not just like the 6-month interval or anything like that?
I think the measurement period is a year.
Yes.
You have to establish yourself that this employee is working a minimum of 30 hours. So what we've known as a full-time employee, it's kind of been adjusted because of Obamacare. So,
Well, we just need to go down classification.
So it does average out, okay, at the end of the year, this year they worked their 30 hours, we offer them the benefit they take. The next year, they don't work that 30 hours, then what?
That's up to him.
We don't offer it, they don't get it anymore.
That, at that point, would be a policy decision of the board. I mean, legally, we have to at the point that they hit the 30 hours. And then at that point, it's just an employee decision. And I think probably as we go through this, kind of taking notes of some things we want to revisit and handle, this would be one of those things on how to define full-time employees.
Capers is the same way. To be in a Capers covered position, you have to work 1,000 hours. And you have to establish that. So, and that's a board decision if they want to make that position a Capers covered position or not.
So your 1,000 hours less than 30 hours a week.
We're gonna take a quick break.
Yes, they were, but the employee was not offered. They were working their 1,000 hours.